Have you ever felt how quickly respect can vanish when a man reveals too much? A careless confession, a desperate plea for comfort, and suddenly his strength becomes fragility, his mystery turns to exposure. The Stoics warned against this. True power lies not in controlling others, but in mastering yourself, guarding what is sacred, and remaining unshaken even in intimacy. To love deeply does not mean to give away every secret, every fear, every weakness. It means to stand with dignity, to be warm yet disciplined, affectionate yet independent. Today we will uncover 8 things a man must keep hidden, not to deceive, but to protect his virtue and reveal his truest self. As we step into the first chapter, let us begin with a moment that every man has known, the quiet hour when life presses its full weight upon your shoulders. The room is still, but inside your chest there is a storm. Doubt whispers that you are not enough. Pain insists that you should collapse, and deep down, a hidden voice longs for someone, anyone, to take that burden away. Now imagine you share that hidden turmoil too freely. You spread your weakness upon the table like an offering, waiting for understanding, waiting for comfort. What happens then? The sympathy might come for a moment, yes, but something else arrives with it, a shift in the balance. Your strength becomes less certain in their eyes. Your authority shrinks. What once was dignity begins to dissolve into fragility. And that is why the Stoics warned us. Guard your weaknesses as a man guards the flame of his own hearth, for once exposed to the wind, it flickers, and once flickering, it can die. Here's where Stoic philosophy enters not as theory, but as survival. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He did not say you will never feel pain. He did not say you must pretend the wound isn't there. He said, strength is a choice, born not from the absence of suffering, but from the way you carry it. To bear it with composure is to define yourself. I recall a man who once worked under crushing pressure. His company downsized, his health faltered, his marriage stood at the edge of collapse. Many nights he sat in his car after work, staring at the dark windshield, feeling the despair rise. And yet, when he walked into his home, he chose silence. He greeted his children, kissed his wife on the forehead, and carried on. Did he deny his weakness? No. He met it privately, like a soldier meeting an enemy on the night watch. Each time he resisted the urge to complain, each time he chose restraint over self-pity, he sharpened his character. Slowly, almost invisibly, that man became unbreakable, not because life spared him hardship, but because he refused to let hardship dictate his face to the world. The Stoic man understands this paradox. To acknowledge weakness inwardly is honest, but to advertise it outwardly is dangerous. For when you seek pity, you trade away respect. You may receive tender words, but they are laced with quiet doubt. A lover, a wife, a companion, if they see only the cracks and never the marble, how can they trust the statue to stand? This is not cruelty, it is human nature. And so wisdom says, reveal enough to remain human, but never so much that you appear undone. Seneca, in his letters, often reminded his friends that endurance is not about feeling nothing, but about mastering what you feel. He wrote, "We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Weakness, then, is often the magnification of our pain through the lens of fear." A Stoic trains himself to reduce that lens, to shrink the monster in his mind until it is small enough to be carried alone. Picture a gladiator entering the arena. His body aches from old wounds, his spirit trembles at the roar of the crowd. If he kneels before the fight begins, confessing his terror, the crowd will pity him for a heartbeat and despise him forever after. But if he rises, even limping, even bleeding, the crowd sees only courage. That is how weakness must be handled, known inwardly but guarded outwardly. This does not mean a man must build a wall of stone around his heart. It means he must know the difference between confession that strengthens intimacy and confession that undermines respect. Share your dreams, your vision, your love that deepens connection. But if every ache, every fear, every insecurity becomes an open scroll for others to read, then you are no longer the master of your story. You have become its beggar, waiting for validation. The Stoic path offers another way. Transform weakness into training. Treat each trial as the forge, each setback as the hammer, each scar as proof that the iron is being shaped. Epictetus declared, "Difficulties are things that show a man what he is." Weakness, therefore, is not shame, it is raw material. But raw material must be worked in silence. No craftsman invites the crowd to watch every strike of the chisel. The work is shaped in silence, and only the finished form speaks. Let us return to the modern man, standing in that car at night, wrestling with despair. What made his silence noble was not that he denied his pain, but that he chose to battle it within, away from the gaze of those who leaned on him. His children did not see his trembling hands. They saw a steady father. His wife did not see his doubt. She saw a man still standing. And in that choice, he preserved their trust, while also giving himself the arena to grow stronger. Over time, the weakness that once threatened to drown him became the foundation of his resilience. In a world that glorifies constant sharing, endless confession, and the parade of every feeling on a digital stage, this lesson cuts deeper than ever. To hide weakness is not to be false. It is to be disciplined, to be measured, to resist the modern temptation of scattering your soul to strangers who cannot hold it. A man who is always bleeding in public cannot be trusted to protect in private. A man who must always be comforted cannot be relied upon when others seek comfort from him. So the Stoic man chooses another path. He faces his trials without spectacle. He takes the blow, he feels its sting, but he does not run to the crowd screaming his wound. He breathes, he reflects, he rebuilds. And when he emerges, he does so with composure, as if to say, "Yes, I was struck, but I am still here." This quiet endurance is not about arrogance, it is about self-respect. Consider this. When you meet a man who speaks endlessly of his weaknesses, who seeks pity like a thirsty traveler seeks water, do you feel drawn to follow him? Or do you step back, sensing that he cannot even carry himself, much less lead others? Now ask the opposite. When you meet a man who has clearly suffered, whose eyes carry storms, but whose voice remains calm, do you not feel something stir? Respect, trust, even awe. This is the difference between displaying weakness and mastering it. From here, the teaching sharpens. Weakness is not your enemy. It is your raw stone. But guard it, work it, refine it in silence until it becomes strength. Do not confuse vulnerability with self-exposure. Do not mistake pity for love. What others need from you is not a catalogue of your wounds, but the assurance that you can rise despite them. Marcus Aurelius himself, Emperor of Rome and burdened beyond imagination, wrote nightly in his meditations of his doubts, his aches, his weariness. But note this, he wrote in his journal, not in the Senate. He poured out his weakness in the privacy of his pages, then walked into the daylight as emperor, steady and calm. His empire did not need his tears, it needed his strength. His writings remained personal, his composure public. That is the Stoic balance every man must learn. So let us close this chapter with a truth as sharp as iron. To reveal every weakness is to hand away your crown. To endure them in silence, to face them with clarity, is to forge yourself into the kind of man who cannot be shaken. Weakness will always exist, but how you carry it determines whether it enslaves you or shapes you into something greater. And this is where the journey continues, for once a man learns to guard his weakness, he is ready to face the next hidden truth, one even more dangerous to reveal. Advancing to the second chapter, let us walk into a scene most men know too well, the moment when the heart sinks because of a choice gone wrong. You spoke too quickly, and your words cut deeper than you intended. You rushed into a decision, and the consequences now sit heavy on your chest. In that moment, the mind screams for relief. The tongue aches to confess everything, and the pride of a man trembles on the edge of collapse. Mistakes expose us in ways victories never do. They whisper, "You are not as wise as you thought. You are not as strong as you seemed." But here's where the Stoics step forward like steady hands on your shoulder. They remind us that mistakes are not simply failures. They are teachers. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Every error, then, is not a dead end, but a doorway, if we choose to walk through it with clarity. Now imagine a man who lays all his mistakes bare before a woman he loves. Not the occasional slip, not the honest sharing that deepens intimacy, but every misstep, every blunder, every careless wound. What happens? The warmth of compassion may appear at first, but soon it cools. Respect quietly fades. She begins to see not the man who learns and adapts, but the man who clings to his failures as if they were excuses. She no longer sees the oak tree, but the broken branch. And once that shift takes root, it is nearly impossible to reverse. A Stoic man chooses another path. He does not flaunt his mistakes as badges of weakness, nor does he bury them under layers of pride. He works with them in silence, as a craftsman shaping raw stone in a hidden workshop. To reveal everything is to lose the dignity of restraint. To conceal wisely is to preserve the aura of strength. This is not deceit, it is discipline. I once knew a man who miscalculated badly in his business. He invested in a partnership that collapsed within months, leaving him near ruin. He could have run home and poured out his panic before his wife, seeking her pity as if her comfort could undo his folly. Instead, he stayed quiet. He studied every error, traced every wrong judgment, and learned where greed had clouded reason. At home, he remained steady, not because he was unfeeling, but because he understood that his family needed his presence, not his panic. Months later, he rebuilt with greater wisdom. His wife admired him not for his flawless record, but for the way he carried his mistakes without drowning the household in them. That is Stoic strength. Seneca once said, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." Mistakes are that friction. They rub against our pride, scraping away illusions. Yet when handled properly, they polish us. The Stoic does not fear that process. He accepts it as necessary, even sacred. But he does not parade it in search of sympathy. He works through it with humility, guided by reason, not desperation. Think of a soldier who missteps on the battlefield. If he falls to his knees crying, I failed," he endangers not only himself, but the men beside him. But if he steadies his breath, notes the mistake, and quietly corrects it, he preserves both his honor and the trust of his comrades. So it is in the battle of everyday life. A man must own his errors, yes, but he must also guard how and where he exposes them. This is where discipline comes in. A Stoic man does not rush headlong into mistakes through recklessness. He considers carefully, acts deliberately, and minimizes error where he can. Yet he also accepts the reality that even the wisest stumble. When he does not flinch. He studies the failure with a surgeon's precision. What caused it? What can be salvaged? What must never be repeated? In this process, he's not cruel to himself, nor indulgent. He is rational, sober, exacting. The mistake becomes not a chain, but a stepping stone. Epictetus captured the essence when he said, "It is not the things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them." A mistake by itself is neutral. It is a fact, like rain falling or a stone lying on the road. What makes it heavy is how we interpret it. If we see it as proof of our incompetence, it crushes us. If we see it as a chance to grow, it strengthens us. The Stoic chooses the latter. He refuses to be humiliated by error. Instead, he lets error refine him into something sharper. Now pause and consider the opposite, the man who hides from his mistakes, not with silence, but with blame. He points fingers at others, at circumstances, at fate. "It wasn't my fault," he insists, again and again. This man may preserve his pride for a moment, but in truth, he corrodes his own soul. For by refusing ownership, he refuses growth. The Stoics would call him a prisoner of false opinion. Freedom begins only when you can say with calmness, "Yes, this was mine, and I will use it." The great power lies in perseverance. Mistakes are rarely corrected in a single day. They demand patience, steady effort, and relentless honesty. The Stoic man knows that true change is not sudden fire, but slow iron in the forge. He returns again and again to the lesson, chiseling away his flaws, strengthening his resolve, and in this repeated labor, he becomes unshakable. Picture a craftsman carving a statue. Each strike of the chisel might at first look like damage, but over time, the form emerges. So it is with mistakes. Each misstep is a strike against the rough stone of your character. Handled with intention, those strikes reveal the figure hidden within, the disciplined, resilient, wiser man you are meant to be, but only if you endure the process without vanity or complaint. In relationships, this principle takes on special importance. A woman does not expect perfection. She knows the man she loves will stumble. What she watches for is how he handles the stumble. Does he collapse into excuses, drowning her in regret? Or does he rise, admit the fall with dignity, and move forward with clarity? The first drains respect. The second deepens it. A Stoic man chooses the second. He does not deny his mistakes, but neither does he bleed them out onto others in a way that corrodes trust. And here is the paradox worth remembering. Silence about mistakes is not cowardice, it is wisdom. You do not need to confess every failure in order to grow. You need to learn from it, integrate it, and let your future actions reveal the lesson. The oak tree does not announce every storm it has survived. It simply stands taller, its bark thicker, its roots deeper. So let us draw the thread tight. Mistakes are inevitable. They are the cracks in the road, the storms in the sky, the shadows on the path. But to a Stoic, they are also gifts. Gifts that demand reflection, ownership, and correction. To spill them endlessly before others is to seek comfort at the cost of respect. To hide them in arrogance is to waste their wisdom. The golden mean is this: Own them privately, learn deeply, act wisely. The next time you stumble, and you will remember the Stoic way. Take responsibility without shame, learn the lesson without self-pity, correct your course with patience and discipline, and let your strength be proven not by words of regret, but by the life you build after the fall. Because in the end, a man is not measured by the absence of mistakes. He is measured by what he makes of them. And from this truth, we turn toward the next hidden thing a man must guard. One that tests not his failures, but his deepest desires. Moving into the third chapter, let us step quietly into a man's inner world, the secret chamber where his dreams live. These are not the fleeting images of sleep, but the visions that guide his waking hours. The kind of dreams that carry both hope and risk, both fire and fear. They are delicate, like seeds held in the palm of your hand. Expose them too soon to the cold wind of judgment, and they die before they take root. Now, imagine a man rushing to share every dream the moment it sparks in his heart. He tells the world before he has built the foundation. He tells a woman he barely knows, hoping she will believe in him enough to give him strength. At first it feels good. Her nod, her smile, her gentle words. But soon he notices her eyes, searching, questioning, wondering if these dreams are real or just illusions. Respect begins to fade. She sees not the strength of his vision, but the fragility of his need for approval. And this is why a Stoic man guards his dreams, not with fear, but with discipline. Here's where the wisdom of Marcus Aurelius strikes like a hammer. The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. Dreams are thoughts raised to the highest level. They are not decorations to impress others. They are blueprints for the life you intend to build. And so they must be protected, cultivated, and tested in silence until they become unshakable. Consider the story of a young builder who longed to raise a house upon the hill. Before laying a single stone, he boasted of its beauty to everyone he met. He described the marble pillars, the great roof, the shining doors. People admired him for his imagination. But years passed, and still no house stood. His words became an empty echo, his name a quiet joke. Contrast him with another builder who spoke little but worked daily. While others laughed at his silence, he laid stone upon stone. Years later, when the house stood complete, strong against wind and rain, no words were needed. His dream had become reality. Which of these men commands your respect? A Stoic man understands that dreams are not meant for display. They are meant for labor. He does not confuse aspiration with fantasy. He chooses realistic goals, shaped by his values and bound to his capabilities. Seneca once warned that to be everywhere is to be nowhere. The same is true of dreams. To scatter your energy across countless fantasies is to waste your life. To focus your effort on what truly matters is to become powerful. This is where discipline takes hold. The Stoic man asks himself, does this dream align with virtue? Does it serve my growth, or does it flatter my vanity? If it is vain, he discards it. If it is grounded, he pursues it with quiet persistence. He does not rely on others to endorse his vision. He relies on his own judgment, his own work, his own inner compass. Autonomy is his anchor. Think of Epictetus, who taught freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. Dreams that depend on applause or recognition are chains disguised as wings. They lift you for a moment, but they bind you in the long run. A Stoic man does not dream to be admired. He dreams to become. He dreams to grow. He dreams to fulfill the duty of being himself, fully and without compromise. Let me share another story. A friend once confessed to me his dream of becoming a writer. He announced it loudly to his circle, basking in their encouragement. But he spent more time talking about his future books than writing them. Soon, people stopped asking about his progress. Their silence became heavier than their praise. In contrast, I knew another man who spoke little of his ambitions. He woke early, wrote daily, studied the masters, and sharpened his craft. Years later, when his work emerged, it carried the weight of true discipline. The first man sought recognition and lost both respect and his dream. The second man sought growth and earned both. Dreams, then, are not to be hidden in shame, but protected with intention. To share them carelessly is to scatter their power. To guard them until they are rooted in reality is to preserve their dignity. This is not secrecy, it is self-respect. At this stage, let us draw from the imagery of nature. The oak does not announce itself as a mighty tree when it is still an acorn. It rests in the soil, silent and unseen, drawing strength from within. Only when its roots are deep and its trunk strong does it rise above the earth. The Stoic man treats his dreams the same way. He plants them in silence, waters them with discipline, and allows time to shape their growth. When they rise undeniable. Notice also the danger of tying dreams to another's approval, especially the approval of a woman. It is not her role to confirm the worth of your vision. If she does, it may soothe you for a moment, but it makes you dependent. If she does not, you may abandon what could have been your path to greatness. Both outcomes betray your autonomy. A man who lives for validation is no longer living his own life. Instead, a Stoic man invites support when the time is right, but he never relies on it. He builds his dreams as a craftsman builds his work, focused, self-reliant, patient, and in this self-reliance lies his freedom. Here is the quiet power. When your dream becomes real, you need no speech to prove it. Your life itself becomes the argument. People respect what they can see, not what they are asked to believe. The house on the hill, the finished book, the steady character. These are the proofs of a dream rightly pursued. And so the Stoic man remembers that his dreams are not about escape from reality, but about engagement with it. They are not fantasies, but duties. They call him not to chase illusions, but to build something worthy of his life. He knows he cannot control the outcome completely, but he can control his effort, his discipline, and his direction. That is enough. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." Likewise, the Stoic man wastes no time proving his dreams with empty talk. He proves them with the life he creates. So let us close this chapter with clarity. A man's dreams are sacred. They must be guarded from vanity, from premature exposure, from the hunger for approval. They must be shaped by discipline, pursued with humility, and carried with self-reliance. Dreams are not for display. They are for transformation. And when a man learns to protect his dreams, he is ready to face the next test, not of his hopes, but of his deepest desires for power and control. Entering the fourth chapter, let us step into the most dangerous battlefield of all, the battlefield inside a man's chest. It is not fought with swords or armies, but with tides of emotion rising and falling, pulling him in directions he does not always understand. Anger that burns like fire, desire that clouds like fog, sadness that cuts like winter wind. Every man has felt these storms. The question is not whether they come, but what we choose to do when they arrive. Now imagine a man who gives himself over completely to his emotions. He erupts in anger at the slightest insult. He collapses in despair at the first setback. He clings desperately to affection, fearing that without it, he will vanish. Such a man does not live. He is carried. Like a ship without anchor, he is thrown about by every wave. And worse still, when he reveals every passing surge to others, especially to a woman he loves, he shifts from being a steady presence into a fragile burden. Respect drains quietly, replaced with caution. She begins to wonder if he can carry her when he cannot even carry himself. But here's where Stoicism offers its hard and liberating truth. Feelings are not enemies, they are signals. To deny them is foolish. To be ruled by them is ruin. The Stoic path is the middle way. Acknowledge emotions clearly, yet choose responses wisely. As Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Strength does not mean becoming stone, it means becoming master of the storm. Consider a man walking through the marketplace of ancient Rome. A merchant insults his clothing, another cuts him off in line. The crowd is loud, impatient, rude. He feels the spark of anger in his chest. He feels the urge to shout, to strike, to prove himself. But he remembers, anger is not command, it is a signal. He breathes, he pauses, he chooses silence. He continues his business as though nothing touched him. To others he looks calm, perhaps even unbothered, but inside he has won the greatest of victories, not over others, but over himself. This is what Stoicism means by mastery. Feelings arise, as they always will. But they do not hijack reason. They do not decide the man's action for him. He decides. That is freedom. Let me share a modern story. A colleague once told me of a man at work who was passed over for promotion. The sting was heavy. Another man, less qualified, was chosen. That night he went home, ready to pour his frustration onto his wife, to complain, to curse his fate. But then he stopped himself. What would that bring? Pity, perhaps, but not progress. Instead, he sat alone, wrote down his feelings, traced their roots, and turned them into a plan. Months later, with new skills and clearer focus, he earned a greater position than the one he lost. His wife never saw his breakdown. She only saw his rise. That is the quiet dignity of a Stoic man, not suppression, but transformation. Seneca once wrote, "We are not given a short life, but we make it short, and we are not ill-supplied, but wasteful of it." Waste is not only of time, but of emotional energy. Every outburst thrown into the air is energy lost. Every complaint scattered to others is strength leaking away. The Stoic man guards that energy. He refines his emotions into insight, just as fire refines ore into steel. This does not mean he is cold. Quite the opposite. He feels deeply, but he channels it. Love becomes devotion, not desperation. Anger becomes courage, not destruction. Sadness becomes depth, not despair. His emotions are not chains around his neck, but tools in his hand. At this stage, the question arises, should a man share his feelings at all? The answer is yes, but wisely. To share selectively, at the right time, in the right way, is strength. To pour them out indiscriminately at every turn is weakness disguised as honesty. A Stoic man does not pretend he has no emotions. He chooses how to reveal them so that when he does, they carry weight, not chaos. Think of a leader in the middle of crisis. His men are afraid. His heart pounds just as theirs does. He feels the fear, but he does not show it in panic. He chooses calm words, steady posture, measured tone. Later, in private, he may confess his dread to a trusted companion. But in the moment of need, he becomes a pillar. That is how feelings should be handled, not denied, but governed, revealed with purpose. This is where emotional intelligence merges with Stoic rationality. To know your own feelings, to listen to their message, yet to refuse them the power of command, this is mastery. The man who can do this becomes unshakable. He is like a river, full of movement, yet always flowing within its banks. Now imagine how this affects relationships. A woman does not expect a man to be unfeeling, but she longs for steadiness. She wants to see that his emotions enrich him, not enslave him. If he weeps at every frustration, she cannot lean on him. If he rages at every slight, she cannot trust him. But if he feels deeply, yet carries those feelings with composure, then she finds security in him. He becomes not only a partner, but a fortress. Marcus Aurelius again offers guidance. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment. Emotions are often born from judgment. Change the judgment, and you change the feeling's power. A Stoic man practices this daily. He does not let moods rule his actions. He lets reason and virtue decide. Here is a line to hold tight. Feelings are meant to inform you, not enslave you. When you remember this, you can face anything. So let us close this chapter with clarity. The Stoic man does not kill his emotions. He refines them. He does not expose them recklessly. He reveals them with wisdom. He does not let them dictate his life. He lets them serve his growth. This is what makes him resilient, respected, and free. If you've listened this far, let me ask for something simple. Comment below with just one word: calm. Let it be your reminder of what true strength feels like. And if you're ready to keep walking this path of mastery, subscribe. Every lesson is another stone to build your fortress of inner peace. Because in the end, the man who governs his feelings governs his fate. And that mastery prepares him for the next truth we must uncover. The one tied not to his emotions, but to his deepest fears. Advancing to the 5th chapter, let us step into the most silent territory of all, the guarded chamber of a man's secrets. Not the scandalous kind, not the shameful shadows whispered in fear, but the quiet truths of his inner life. Memories he keeps close, thoughts he does not share, lessons he holds inside as if they were coins of gold. These are treasures that shape him, yet remain unseen. Now imagine a man who scatters every secret at the feet of others. He tells his private stories to anyone who will listen. He shares what was entrusted to him as if it were casual gossip. At first it may seem like openness, even intimacy, but soon those around him begin to feel uneasy. If he speaks so freely of others, what will he say of me? If he cannot guard his own soul, how can he guard theirs? Trust evaporates like mist under the morning sun. Respect slips away. For a man who cannot keep silence is a man who cannot be trusted. Here's where Stoicism carves its line with clarity. Discretion is not cowardice, it is strength. To know what must remain within you is a sign of dignity. To honor what others have shared in confidence is a mark of character. Cicero once said, "The most sacred thing in the world is the human soul." Secrets belong to that sacred space. To treat them carelessly is to trample on the very ground of human worth. Think of a soldier carrying a sealed letter through enemy lines. The letter may contain nothing earth-shattering. It may hold only common words of home, but it is sealed, it is entrusted. To tear it open for curiosity or to hand it to strangers would be a betrayal greater than the words themselves. So it is with secrets. It is not always their content that matters, but the act of guarding them. The seal is sacred. Breaking it dishonors the man. I recall a story of a young man who once betrayed a friend's confidence. The secret was small, just a hidden affection the friend carried in silence. He told it lightly at a gathering, laughing, thinking it harmless. But when his friend discovered the betrayal, the laughter ended, trust shattered, and with it, a friendship that had stood for years. The young man learned too late. Secrets are not measured by their size, but by their sanctity. Break one, and you break something inside yourself as well. The Stoic man lives differently. He does not share everything he knows. He does not expose what is given in trust. He understands that gossip is poison that corrodes the one who speaks even more than the one spoken about. Each time a man spreads a secret, he thins his own character, hollowing it out until nothing remains. Seneca warned against such folly, reminding us that to betray trust is to betray oneself. Here's the paradox worth noting. A man may keep secrets not because he fears exposure, but because he respects the dignity of silence. There is strength in restraint. To hold your own counsel, to let others wonder, to preserve the privacy of your soul, these are not signs of weakness, they are signs of mastery. Think of Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, surrounded by thousands of voices, countless ears, straining to know his every thought. Yet, in his meditations, he wrote not for them, but for himself, in the secrecy of his own pages. He kept his most honest reflections private. Why? Because he knew the power of an inner life unexposed. Those writings, never intended for others, became his fortress. His secrets did not weaken him, they strengthened him. At this stage, let us pause and ask, what happens when a man shares too freely with the woman closest to him? Does love not demand honesty? Yes, honesty, but not indiscretion. For to reveal every secret thought, every passing doubt, every private wound is not intimacy, it is burden. She may care, but she cannot carry all of him. And if he asks her to, she will begin to see him not as a steady partner, but as a restless soul without anchor. Love thrives on trust, not exposure. Respect grows from measured sharing, not reckless confession. The Stoic man therefore chooses wisely. He shares enough to build connection, but not so much that he empties his inner well. He knows that privacy is not distance, but strength. He remains a man with depth, an ocean that cannot be charted in a single glance. And that depth, far from pushing her away, draws her closer. For mystery commands respect where overexposure invites doubt. Discretion also extends to the secrets of others. A Stoic man treats another's confidence as sacred property. If someone entrusts him with a story, he locks it within. He does not use it to gain favor. He does not wield it as leverage. He does not whisper it in moments of carelessness. He holds it as if it were his own. To do otherwise is to lose not just trust, but honor. There is an old saying, a man who cannot keep his own counsel is not fit to guide others. This is the truth of leadership, of friendship, of love. The one who gossips reveals his own poverty of soul. The one who keeps secrets with dignity shows that his soul is rich enough to guard what is not his. Let us not mistake this for deception. Silence is not lying. Silence is protection. A man may choose not to speak, not because the truth would harm him, but because sharing it would dishonor the sacredness of privacy. There is power in this restraint. Just as a fortress with gates always open cannot defend its treasure, a man who speaks without measure cannot defend his dignity. And here lies the essence of self-trust. A Stoic man trusts himself with his secrets. He does not fear them, nor does he need others to carry them. He relies on his own judgment to know when to reveal and when to guard. This self-trust is not isolation, it is sovereignty. A man who governs his secrets governs himself. From here, we can see clearly, secrets are not weights to be cast off, but treasures to be carried with care. To guard them is to guard your soul. To protect them is to protect your dignity. To betray them is to betray yourself first, and others second. So let us close this chapter with firmness. A Stoic man keeps his secrets not out of shame, but out of honor. He protects the confidences of others not out of fear, but out of respect. He chooses silence, not because he is weak, but because he is strong enough to know that some things lose their power once they are spoken. A man's secrets, rightly held, are not shadows, they are the quiet pillars of his character. And from this guarded silence, he moves with integrity into the next challenge. Not what he keeps hidden, but what he chooses to reveal in the pursuit of truth. Moving into the 6th chapter, let us confront the one companion that never leaves any man, pain. It arrives uninvited, lingers without mercy, and tests us in ways that comfort never could. Pain is the shadow behind every triumph, the quiet weight beneath every smile. Some men groan beneath it, broadcasting their misery to the world. Others seek pity, hoping their wounds will earn them sympathy. But the Stoic man walks another road. He accepts pain as part of the human condition, and he chooses to carry it with dignity. Now imagine a man who complains endlessly about every ache, every misfortune. He shows his partner his wounds as if they were trophies, expecting her to soothe him, to cradle his misery until it disappears. At first, she may comfort him, but slowly her heart grows weary. What began as care turns into burden. Respect dissolves. She begins to see not the strength of a man, but the fragility of one who cannot stand. And that is why the Stoic warns, never parade your pain as a badge of suffering. Bear it instead as a quiet mark of endurance. Seneca once said, "Fire tests gold, and misfortune tests brave men." In those few words lies the entire Stoic approach. Pain is not a curse, it is a test. The man who complains fails the trial. The man who endures, even with a steady smile, proves that his spirit cannot be broken. He may bleed, but he does not bow. Consider a soldier struck in battle. His leg burns with injury. His body trembles, yet he clenches his teeth and keeps moving. He knows his brothers in arms draw strength not from his cries, but from his composure. His pain is real, but his endurance is stronger. In silence, he tells them, "We keep going." That is what Stoicism asks of every man, not to deny suffering, but to transform it into courage for himself and for those who walk beside him. At this stage, it is vital to see that Stoicism is not about pretending pain does not exist. It is about facing it without surrender. Pain is a message. It reminds us that life is fragile, that the body can falter, that fortune can turn against us. But it also offers something greater, the chance to refine the soul. Just as a blacksmith uses fire to shape iron, pain is the furnace that shapes character. I recall a man who lived through years of illness. Each day his body betrayed him with exhaustion and aches. Many expected him to retreat into bitterness, to curse the world for his fate. But he did the opposite. He greeted each morning with gratitude that he still breathed, that he still had another chance to speak kindly, to think clearly, to act justly. His smile became legendary among those who knew him, not because his life was free of pain, but because he chose to rise above it. He taught those around him more about strength than any lecture ever could. His cheerfulness in the face of suffering became a quiet sermon in itself. Here's the truth most men forget. When you moan about your pain, you multiply it. You hand it to others, asking them to carry what only you can bear. But when you endure in silence, you diminish it. You shrink its power. And strangely, in that act of endurance, the respect of others grows. They see not weakness, but resilience. They see not misery, but mastery. Epictetus, who himself was a slave and crippled by injury, once told his students, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." If anyone knew pain, it was him. Yet he never defined himself by it. He saw pain not as an enemy, but as an opportunity to practice virtue, patience, courage, endurance. He showed the world that a man can be broken in body, yet remain unbroken in soul. From here, let us think of how this plays out in relationships. A woman does not expect her partner to be immune to pain. She knows he will hurt. She knows he will struggle. What she seeks is the assurance that he will not collapse beneath it, dragging her into despair. She longs for a man who feels pain but refuses to be ruled by it. One who can smile through hardship, who can stand tall even when his knees shake. That steadiness creates trust. That endurance inspires respect. Pain is inevitable, but suffering is a choice. The Stoic man knows the difference. He cannot control the blows life deals him, but he can control his response. He can reframe pain as a teacher, as a crucible, as a chance to prove to himself that he is stronger than the trial. And in doing so, he strips pain of its sting. Picture again the blacksmith's forge. The fire roars, the metal bends, the hammer falls. Each strike looks like destruction, but it is creation. Each burn looks like loss, but it is transformation. So it is with pain. Each hardship faced with dignity is another strike shaping the man you are becoming. If you endure, you emerge sharper, stronger, more resilient than before. Here's a paradox. The Stoic man often seems cheerful, even in the midst of hardship. Not because he feels no pain, but because he chooses not to let pain steal his joy. He laughs when others expect him to weep. He moves forward when others expect him to retreat. His attitude confuses those who do not understand, but in truth, it is not confusion, it is mastery. He has decided that pain will not dictate the quality of his spirit. Seneca advised practicing discomfort even in times of ease, sleeping on the floor, fasting, enduring cold, so that when real hardship comes, the soul is already trained. Pain, then, is not an intruder, but a familiar. And when it arrives, the Stoic man greets it not with dread, but with readiness. He says, "I knew you would come. Let us see what I am made of." And so the Stoic man refrains from broadcasting his pains. He does not parade them before his partner, asking for pity. He carries them quietly, transforming them into growth. He shows her through his steadiness that pain may visit his body, but it will never own his soul. That truth deepens her trust more than any words ever could. In the end, pain is the great revealer. It strips away illusions. It shows who is fragile and who is forged. And the Stoic man, by bearing it with grace, reveals himself to be unshakable. So let us close this chapter with a truth that should never be forgotten. Pain is not your downfall. It is your forge. wear it not as misery, but as armor. And when you carry it with calmness and cheer, you show the world that no fire, no wound, no storm can take away your inner freedom. From here, we step into the next hidden truth, where the Stoic man must guard not only his pain, but also his deepest fears, the shadows that dwell in silence, waiting to test his courage in even greater ways. Advancing to the 7th chapter, let us step into the soft and tempting territory of pleasure. Unlike pain, which announces itself loudly, pleasure comes quietly, like honey on the tongue or a gentle fire on a winter's night. It whispers, "Stay here, don't move, this is enough." And in that whisper lies both comfort and danger. For the Stoic man, pleasure is not an enemy, but neither is it a master to be obeyed without question. Now imagine a man who gives himself over completely to his pleasures. He eats until his body is heavy, drinks until his mind is dull, pursues every desire until he is drained. What happens then? At first, others may envy his freedom, but soon they see a man enslaved. His appetite commands him. His desires drag him. He is no longer choosing, he is being led. And when a woman watches such a man, she sees not strength, but captivity. Respect vanishes. The pleasures he sought now own him. Here's where the Stoics sharpen the line with clarity. Pleasure itself is not evil. The evil lies in attachment. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "It is not external things themselves that trouble us, but our judgments about them." Pleasure is only dangerous when we judge it indispensable, when we cling to it as if without it, life is empty. The Stoic man enjoys what comes, but he never needs it. He can taste the wine, but he does not crave it. He can love the embrace, but he does not dissolve into it. His dignity remains untouched. Consider the story of a wealthy merchant. He dined each night on the finest foods, surrounded by music and laughter. Yet when famine struck, he collapsed in despair, unable to live without his luxuries. Beside him lived a farmer who ate plainly and worked with steady rhythm. When the famine came, the farmer carried on. He missed the abundance, yes, but it did not break him. Who was the richer man? The one who owned much but could not live without it, or the one who had little yet remained free? Epictetus captured this truth with precision. Freedom is not procured by a full enjoyment of what is desired, but by controlling the desire. That is the heart of the Stoic approach. True freedom is not to have everything, but to need nothing. The Stoic man practices this daily. He may accept comfort, but he does not collapse without it. He may welcome pleasure, but he does not chase it desperately. At this stage, it is worth remembering, pleasures are fleeting. They pass like shadows at sunset. To cling to them is to grasp at smoke. The Stoic man knows this, and so he takes them lightly, like a traveler sipping water on the road. Enough to refresh, never so much that he forgets the journey. Let me share a personal image. I once knew a man who loved gambling. At first it was harmless, an evening's thrill, a laugh with friends. But slowly, the desire grew. His mind began to circle endlessly around the next game, the next chance. His joy became anxiety, his laughter turned into tension. The pleasure that once served him became the chain that bound him. He forgot that the truest joy is not in winning, but in being free. The Stoic man avoids such traps. He does not seek life in excess, nor does he reject pleasure completely. He walks the middle path. He eats with gratitude but not gluttony. He drinks with enjoyment but not dependence. He loves with passion but not obsession. This is not deprivation, it is balance, and in balance he finds peace. Seneca once advised practicing voluntary hardship, drinking water when wine is available, wearing coarse clothes when silk is near, to remind the soul that pleasure is not necessary for happiness. These practices were not punishments, but training. When comfort is taken away, the Stoic man does not collapse. He remembers that life itself, simple and bare, is enough. From here, the Stoic understanding of pleasure reaches into relationships. A man who seeks only to satisfy his pleasures through others is not a partner, but a consumer. He takes, but he cannot give. A Stoic man is different. He governs his desires before he brings them into another's life. He does not ask a woman to carry the weight of his appetites. He brings instead the steadiness of self-control, the dignity of moderation. And in that steadiness, she finds trust. Here is the paradox worth holding. When you're not attached to pleasure, you enjoy it more. The man who drinks without needing the drink tastes it fully. The man who loves without clinging loves more deeply. The man who touches pleasure but is not bound by it is the man who is truly free. So let us close this chapter with clarity. Pleasure is a gift, not a chain. To take it wisely is strength. To crave it desperately is slavery. The Stoic man walks in freedom by choosing moderation. He lets pleasure serve him, never rule him. And in doing so, he proves that his soul cannot be purchased by the sweetness of desire. From here, we step into the final truth, a man's power. Not the raw force of muscle or wealth, but the silent authority that comes from mastering himself completely. Entering the 8th chapter, let us step into the most celebrated yet most misunderstood realm of all, love. It is the fire that can warm or consume, the force that can build a home or burn it down. For many men, love becomes a surrender, a dissolving of themselves into another. They lose their balance, their independence, even their identity. But the Stoic man sees love through a different lens. To him, love is not a chain. It is a choice, deep, real, but never enslaving. Now imagine a man who clings too tightly to the one he loves. He worships her smile, fears her silence, and trembles at the thought of losing her. What began as devotion turns to dependence. His love, once bright, grows heavy. She feels it too. At first, she may be moved by his intensity, but soon the weight of his need begins to suffocate her. What was once attraction turns into burden. Love without freedom, the Stoics remind us, is not love at all. It is fear wearing a mask. The Stoic man loves differently. He enters love with respect, not possession, with dignity, not desperation. He knows that the one he loves is not his to own, but his to honor. He does not seek to control her heart, nor does he dissolve his own in hers. He stands firm, whole, and free, and from that wholeness, his love gains power. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best way to avenge yourself is not to become like the wrongdoer." Applied to love, this means, do not let passion twist you into someone less than your best self. Do not let desire lead you into acts of jealousy, manipulation, or blindness. To love as a Stoic is to remain true to your principles, even when emotions run high. Love, then, becomes not the undoing of reason, but its flowering. Consider the quiet man who rarely speaks of love but lives it daily. He does not flood his partner with endless words, but with actions. He listens when she speaks, not just to her words, but to her silences. He honors her boundaries, even when his desire wants more. He keeps his promises, not out of fear of loss, but out of devotion to virtue. This man may not call himself a Stoic, but his way of loving reveals it. His love is not loud, It is steady, and steady love, like a river, carves deeper than any flood. At this stage, it's vital to see that the Stoic man does not deny love's beauty. He feels it deeply. He cherishes the gift when it is given, but he does not demand it as his right. He does not grasp at it like a starving man. He holds it with gratitude, knowing it may last for a lifetime or only for a season. To love with this awareness is to free both himself and the one he loves. Gratitude replaces entitlement. Presence replaces fear. Seneca once observed, "He's most powerful who has himself in his own power." In love, this truth is sharper than ever. A man who loses himself in another has lost his center, but a man who governs himself first can love with a freedom that uplifts. His partner does not have to carry his insecurities. She does not have to feed his endless hunger for validation. Instead, she can walk beside him, equal and unburdened. This balance transforms love into partnership, not prison. Now picture the opposite, a man who speaks endlessly of love, who floods every day with declarations, but whose actions reveal carelessness, neglect, or disrespect. His words sound sweet, but they ring hollow. The Stoic man knows better. He believes that true love is not proved by speech, but by consistency. One quiet gesture of loyalty weighs more than 1,000 passionate confessions. Love lived is love believed. Here is the paradox worth remembering. By not clinging, you love more deeply. By not demanding, you receive more freely. By standing firm in yourself, you allow love to flow without fear. The Stoic man embodies this paradox. He does not chain his partner with his needs. He offers freedom, and in that freedom, love flourishes. So let us close this chapter with clarity. The Stoic man does not see love as surrender, but as strength. He loves with depth, but never at the expense of his independence. He loves with passion, but never without reason. His love is an offering, not a demand, a partnership, not a prison. And because of this balance, his love endures. From here, the circle completes. For when a man learns to master his weaknesses, his mistakes, his dreams, his feelings, his secrets, his pains, his pleasures, and finally his love, he stands whole. And in standing whole, he becomes unshakable, free to live, to give, and to walk through the world as a man truly forged by Stoic fire. These 8 truths are not walls to divide you from others, but foundations to reveal your truest strength. By guarding them, you protect your dignity and let your actions speak louder than words. If this message resonates with you, subscribe to continue walking the path of inner mastery and comment below with one word: virtue. Remember, peace begins when you choose to stand firm within yourself.